Something woke me up at 3 a.m. I couldn't believe what was happening at first. So I just kept staring at the ceiling for a few minutes, trying to figure out if I had somehow drifted off while reading in bed or watching TV. But I knew that wasn't the case. My eyes were closed and I was fast asleep when whatever it was happened. And I knew exactly how long I'd been asleep for because only 5 minutes. Earlier, ID looked at my phone to see what time it was. It was 2:55 a.m. Then I felt something brush up against my cheek, and at first I assumed it was a hair or a bug of some sort. You know those little fly things that get trapped inside sometimes? But then I felt it again, and that's when I heard the scurrying noise. Whatever it was, it sounded like a mouse, but I'm pretty sure we don't have any mice in the house. And besides, I would have definitely heard my husband move in his sleep. If there really was a mouse scuttling around in our bed, he's a light sleeper. I turned onto my side, facing away from my husband, trying to listen intently for any more sounds. But the floorboards in our house creaked pretty bad, so I couldn't tell if anything else had happened. I tried to focus on my breathing, relax, and go back to sleep, but there was no way. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour, though I am sure it was only about 15 minutes. My mind was racing, thinking of all sorts of terrible things. What if there was a rat? God forbid. What if there was a snake? Even though neither of those things are native to this part of the country, so it would be pretty unlikely anyway. Then I started thinking maybe I should check under the covers just to be sure. But that seemed kind of extreme. Like I was in the middle of the night, and I didn't want to wake up my husband if I could avoid it. So I lay there for a few more minutes listening intently, hearing nothing. But I just couldn't shake this feeling that something was up. I tried to convince myself that it must have been a dream, and that I hadn't actually been asleep at all. But I knew I was wrong, because I remembered having a full conversation with my husband in my head while I was supposedly dreaming. We were talking about which color paint to buy for the spare bedroom. And that's when I heard it again, the scurrying noise. This time, it sounded closer, like it was right in the bed with me. That's when I decided I just couldn't take it anymore, and I sat straight up in bed. It took me a second to orient myself after staring at the ceiling for so long. For a moment I was disoriented, and I could hear my heart beat in my ears, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. But then I started to calm down once I realized nothing was actually dangerous, and my cat was probably just walking across the bed. But as soon as I began to relax again, I heard the noise for the third time. It was coming from right under the pillow on my side of the bed. That's when I started to panic, and my heart started pounding again. I told myself not to be ridiculous. There was no way that there was actually a snake or a rat living in our pillow. But what if there was? I mean, we do live in the country, and I have heard a couple of horror stories about snakes getting into people's beds before. One time this woman woke up in her bed in Florida and found an 8-foot python wrapped around her. The snake had come in through an open window and climbed into her bed. She screamed and the snake slithered away. I just hope that whatever was in my pillow didn't see me sitting there staring at it with a flashlight and decide to attack. My husband was snoring peacefully beside me, blissfully unaware of whatever might have been happening on the other side of the bed. I didn't want to wake him up, not only because I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting, but also because he's got this really weird habit of acting like everything is fine when I tell him I think there's a snake in the bed, even though he hates snakes. And then afterwards he gives me the silent treatment for like a week. It's really annoying. So I just kept sitting there frozen with fear until it occurred to me that maybe I should just check and see what it was. After all, if it was a snake, I needed to kill it. I hate snakes, and I won't hesitate to stomp on them. I have no mercy. I guess the fear was making me bolder because I would normally think to grab a flashlight and investigate. But I did, and I pushed the covers away and started to lift up the pillow. At this point, I was certain that I was going to find a dead mouse, or a small snake, or maybe even a lizard. But instead, right there in the middle of the pillow, I saw something that I never expected. It was one of the biggest spiders I've ever seen in my entire life. It was brown and hairy, and its legs were all spindly and long, and it looked like it came straight out of Jurassic Park. If that spider had been anywhere else, I probably would have thought it was a daddy longlegs. But seeing as it was clinging onto my pillow for dear life, I knew that wasn't the case. I shrieked and thrashed around until I knocked the spider off the bed and onto the floor where it ran away. As soon as it disappeared from sight, I immediately regretted letting it go. That was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I should have killed that spider. Instead, I started frantically searching the internet for pictures of venomous spiders that are commonly found in this area, just to make sure that I hadn't put myself and my family in danger by setting it free. Apparently there are a lot of different kinds of brown recluse spiders which are highly venomous, but they're rarely seen. They're shy. They bite humans even less often, and it's only really a concern if the person bitten is a child or an elderly person. So I don't know why, I felt a lot better after learning that I probably didn't need to worry about being poisoned by a spider. I went back into bed and snuggled up close to my husband, which made me feel safe and secure. I think that's the reason why most women marry guys who are a bit bigger than them. I don't know. It's nice having someone there to protect you, even if they can't do anything about a spider in the bed. The next morning I told my husband about the spider, but he acted like it was no big deal. Said I should have just killed it, and that it probably would have bitten me if I'd handled it. But I don't think that's true. I could have sworn it hissed at me though, but he still thinks I'm crazy. Of course he does. That's why he acts like that. Doesn't want me to start screaming and freaking out in the middle of the night again. But now whenever I lie in bed, I keep thinking about that spider and I keep wondering, what if it comes back? Or what if there's another one hiding in there? That's why I haven't been sleeping much lately. I spend half the night awake just waiting for something to crawl on me. But I guess that's just what you get when you live in the country. I wish I lived in a city.